Okay, so this is a really nice problem which helps introduce you to power towers. Power towers are where you see this x to the x to the x here, and you could write this as a tetration, so x tetrate 3 like so, but we're going to leave it as a power tower just so it's easy to understand what's going on. We've got x to the x to the x equals root 2 over 2 to the power 2 root 2. So first of all, I'm going to give you a little hint, okay? Just in case you want to pause the video now and try and solve it for yourself, here's your hint. X is an element of the set of rational numbers, meaning that x can be represented as an integer over another integer. So it's not root something, it's not, I don't know, 1 over 0 or something that doesn't make sense. It's an integer over another integer. It's not an imaginary number, don't worry about imaginaries either, okay? So it's a rational number. So we want to turn the right-hand side into a number to the power of another number to the power of another number. Okay, so the first step is we're going to break this power here, this base exponent. We want there to be two pairs of bases and exponents. So let's have a look at this 2 root 2 here. What do we know about 2 root 2? Well, we know that it's made up of two components. We've got 2 multiplied by root 2, and that can be represented as 2 to the 1 multiplied by 2 to the half. And if you use your rules of powers, that's the same as 2 to the power of 1 plus a half, which is 2 to the power of 3 over 2. So let's instead use 2 to the power of 3 over 2 here. Oh, going all sorts of places today. Right, 2 to the power of 3 over 2. Okay, so now we've got a power tower. Right? But we want all of them to be rational. So the problem that we have here is this root 2 over 2. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to break this down so that we can raise this to the power of a number. Okay, because when we raise this to the power of 2, then all of a sudden it becomes rational because you get 2 over 4, which is the same as 1 over 2, which is rational. So we want to raise it to some power, but we can't just raise it to the power 2 because we've still got this 3 over 2 stacked on top of it. So we have to break it down, okay? And more specifically, we have to break this 2 down. So we're going to break this 2 down into, let's say, a half and 4. So what I mean is root 2 over 2 to the power of a half multiplied by 4 to the power 3 over 2. Because a half multiplied by 4 is the same as 2. Now I've just broken it down so that we get a fraction and a whole number that we can then use to raise this to the power of something. Okay, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. So this on top, we can now break it down. Instead of 2 to the power 3 over 2, we can write this as a half to the power of 3 over 2 times 4 to the power of 3 over 2. Okay? Like so. And now 4 to the power of 3 over 2, we can evaluate this as being 8, sorry. So this becomes root 2 to the power 2 to the power of 8 times half to the 3 over 2. And now, using our rules of powers, when you have 8 multiplied by something in the exponent, we can break this down into a set of 2 exponents, right? We can raise it to the power of 8 and then raise that to the power of a half to the 3 over 2. Now don't worry, okay, we're not making a power tower of 3, we're just breaking the multiplication down. These two are on the same level, okay? And it can get a little bit confusing because it's not the same as having one thing to the power of another to the power of another to the power of another. It's one thing to the power of something times something else to the power of something else. So we're not breaking it into a power tower of 4 here. So root 2 to the over 2 to the power of 8, well, that becomes, well, if you raise it to the power of 2, you get 1 over 2. But then if you raise it to the power of 2 again, you get 1 over 4. And then if you raise it to the power of 2 again, you get 1 over 16. And that's the same as raising it to the power of 8. So we're going to replace that with 1 over 16 to the power of half to the power of 3 over 2. And that is our hint done with, because we've now created a power tower where we have 3 things that are all rationals stacked on top of each other. The only problem now is that they're not the same rational number, okay? We have 1/16, which is like a tiny sliver of a cake, right? Tiny slice of pie, 1/16. Then we've got 1/2, which is quite big. And then we've got 3/2, which is like 3 times bigger than that, okay? So our power tower is top heavy. We want to move this large power down to the bottom, right? And how are we going to do that? Okay. Well, first thing we have to do is we have to break down this 3/2 into something like a fraction multiplied by a whole number. So let's do 3 times a half, right? So 1/2, and then we've got 1/16. So we've got 3 times a half. Well, we can break this down here because we've got the rules of powers. We can break this multiplication down into a power of a power. So we've got 1/16 to the power of a half, and then that's all to the power of 3, and then that to the power of a half, okay? And then what's 1/2 to the power of 3? I'm going to have to clear the board here. 1/2 to the power of 3 becomes 1/8, and then if I just have a look what we've got here, 1/8, and then raise that to the power of a half. So 1/8 to the power of a half. Okay, so now we've got another power tower. Okay, this is still equal to x to the x to the x, by the way. We're still just working our way through trying to fiddle with the powers. But now we've got 1/16, which is small, and then 1/8, which is a bit bigger, and then we've got 1/2, which is bigger than that. Okay, so we've still got a top-heavy power tower here. So we're going to still be moving this down to the bottom. Okay, so we've got to break this half up again. Now, same as before, we're going to break it down into a whole number and a fraction. So let's break this half into a quarter multiplied by 2, because a half is equal to 2 lots of a quarter. Okay, so now we can do the same thing again. We can break this up into 1/16 over 1/8 to the power of 2, then raise that to the power of a quarter. 1/8 to the power of 2 is 1/64, so we've got 1/16, 1/64 to the power of 1/4. So now you can see we've got a small number multiplied by a really tiny slice, 1/64, and then to the power of a bigger thing, 1/4. Okay, so this is our indication that we've gone too far. Alright, at this point, we need to stop breaking down the top one and start breaking down one of the other two numbers, okay? And it's best to actually break down. It might look like we need to break down this one here because it's bigger, but it's actually best in this case to break down this middle one. There's many different ways of getting to the same answer. I'm just showing you one, but this will help you understand just how power towers work and how to work with them in future. So you've got 1/64. We need to break this down into something that we can raise 1/16 to the power of, which makes it similar to the rest, okay? And I'm giving you a little bit of a hint here now because we need to break this down into something that makes this similar to this, okay? So, what makes 1/16 into 1/4? Well, if we raise it to the power of a half, that's the same as square rooting it, so that gives us 1/4, right? So we need to break 1/64 down into something that gives us the 1/2 that we want. But remember, we've still got this, okay? So it's not as simple as that. We actually need to break down 1/64 into something that when we raise it to the power of 1/4, because we have to raise it to the power of 1/4, we've got to raise the whole thing to the power of 1/4. When we raise it to the power of 1/4, we then get our 1/2 that we want to then use on this, okay? So, something to the power of a quarter equals 1/2. That's the fourth root of something. And the fourth root of 16 is equal to 2. So the fourth root of 1/16 is equal to 1/2. Okay? Now, bear with me for a moment here. So, take this, all right? Take the 1/64, break it down into 1/16 because that's what we want, and then we've got to multiply that by 1/4 to make it the 1/64. and then we're raising that to the power of a quarter. The base is 1 over 16, so this is equal to this, okay? So we've got this now. Now, when we raise 1/16 to the power of a quarter, we get 1 over 16 to the power of 1 over 2, which is what we wanted, and then we've got to multiply by 1 over 4 to the power of 1 over 4, and you might be able to see it now. When we raise 1/16 to the power of 2 times by something, we can use our laws of powers, raise that to the power of a half. That's being all raised to the power of a quarter to the power of a quarter, which gives us 1/16 to the power of half is a quarter. So we now have a quarter to the power of a quarter to the power of a quarter, which is the same as x to the power of x to the power of x. That's all for today's video. Yeah, click the links in the description and yeah, piss off.